Thank you. So yeah, you guys may have noticed I'm not Mikey. You may not have. You may not have noticed because we are kind of twinning. So, but I'm gonna start with this little story. Also, you may not know that not one day, but in the past, I once was a young tyke. Yes, I once was this tall, and so around my fourth year of life, my family moved to a new house, and it was this double-wide trailer, and it was really new to us, right? One of the new things was this stove. It was this really awesome, super sexy electric stove, right? And if you haven't seen those before, the burners are electric, all right? So, because the stove is electric, the burners would be electric. It just makes sense. But I was 4. I had never seen an electric stove. And so I was I was this observant, kid who wanted to know, everything. I wanted to understand it. And I was like, Dad, whenever those spinny things, the burners, when those turn red, does that mean it's hot? And he was like, yeah, touch it and see. And it was bright red. And so, I was this tall, so I reach up, and it hurt so bad, right? Yeah, why would he do that? That's what I think. To this day, sometimes, I'll never forget it, but sometimes I'm like, Dad, why'd you do that? He just laughs. To this day, he just laughs. But I was kind of thinking about that. I was like, why? Why would I do that? Why did I touch the stove? Was I that curious? Because if I really, really knew it was hot, I probably wouldn't have touched it, right? I mean, I spent the next hour just with my index finger in this cup of ice water. Yeah. But I did that because I had faith in my dad, right? I trusted him. I completely trusted him. I still do. I love him so much. And it's I trusted that moment with this, right? And I touched the stove. And for this series, John Lupe and I have decided to focus on this one verse. And it's one of those verses that if you unpack it's a lot more than just what it seems like, right? And so if you guys could put it up on the screen, it's 1 Thessalonians 1:3. It says, we remember before our God and Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. So that first thing is faith. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Faith. What is faith? My gut instinct is that's trusting, right? I have faith in God. I trust God. Or I feel like there's always that kind of Sunday school answer. The smart kid is well, faith is trusting in something that you don't see, like gravity. I trust that gravity's there. I have faith in gravity, even though I can't see it. And yeah, that's true. But I sat down and I was I want to say, what does this really mean? And I realized it was kind of one of those words that you use it all the time, maybe, but you realize that if someone had a test and they were write the definition of this word, you'd be it's when you and then God, it's faith. And it's you can't use the word in the definition thing, And man, so I looked it up and I went back to the Greek and I was what does this word really mean? And it said, it's a moral conviction of religious truth and especially a reliance on Christ. And I was man, that's a lot deeper, that's a lot deeper than just trusting in something that's not there, this deep reliance on the Lord. But then whenever I went back to the text, I looked at it, and it doesn't just say faith, but it says your work produced by faith. So faith is kind of is describing the work, right? And that's cool because it's whoa, work produced by faith. So that means that work, or I guess faith, is kind of a muscle. So faith is a muscle, right? Let's hear it, Tanner. Faith is a muscle! Yeah! So this is what we're going to do tonight. Every time I'm going to say faith is a muscle, I need you guys to shout back to me, yeah! And flex, right? Because faith is a muscle, all right? Yeah! I was totally not ready for it, and I just told you to do that. I have a Bible story real quick that we're going to go through here, and I need some volunteers. Ben. Yeah, I told him a little bit ago I needed him. Also, Hayden. Yeah, Cheney, come on. So you may have heard this story. You may not have. But I think it's more fun if we act it out because it's just, it's going to be fun. All right, so I need Cheney and Hayden to come stand by me. And Ben, you stay over there all alone. All right. So I asked Hayden earlier, actually, if he took his headband off and shook his hair, if it would be kind of like alluring or sexy. Would it? I don't know. Well, it doesn't matter anyway because I got you this. So if you could please put that on. All right, so we're going to go back to Genesis 29. All right. So we've got Jacob, right, who's like a grandson of Abraham. Abraham's that guy, he had many sons. So, ooh. That's, all right, that's good. That's looking good. All right, so this is Jacob, all right? Ben, you're going to be Jacob. And also, I just want you to know, this is Jacob, and these are other characters. They're not who they are in real life, all right? So don't be weird and awkward about it. But Jacob is this cool dude, all right? And he's traveling, and he basically finds some people that he realizes he's related to, he has blood with, right? One of them is his Uncle Laban, right? And his Uncle Laban is like, dude, Jacob, come stay with me. I'm Uncle Laban, BT dubs. Come stay with me.
Okay.
And he says, okay. And then, so Genesis 29 says, after Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, you do not look like Cheney. You look like you could be sisters, though, which is perfect. It's so perfect. It's hilarious. Okay, so after Jacob had stayed with Laban for a whole month, Laban said to him, just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? No. Tell me, what should your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah, stay over there. All right. So, Leah had weak eyes. Look at your weak eyes. But, you're killing me. So, Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Aww. So, Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel.
Ditto.
Yeah. But Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me. So, Jacob served 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. Like, bow, 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 like, bow, 7 years, all right? That's a long time. But it seemed like only a few days to him because he was so in love with Rachel. I know. So then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is completed. I want to make love to her.
Sure.
All right, so Laban brought together all the people of the place and had a feast, a wedding feast, right? And he said, oh, he didn't say oh, I lost my place in the Bible. But when the evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob.
That's right.
And Jacob made love to her. Nope, no, she wasn't. I know it. She looks manly today. All right. Rachel, stay over here. Anyway,
Sorry, Dad. My bad.
but when the morning came, in Jacob's household, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?
Yep.
Anyway, thank you so much. You guys can sit down. Give it up for these 3. They were awesome. Give it up for them. Thanks. It's okay. So, of course, Jacob did 7 more years of work, right, to have Rachel's hand in marriage, okay? Even though he was given Leah at first, and he had 2 wives. That's a whole other thing that we could go into at another time. But, so, yeah, that was awesome, right, that he would work for 7 years for Rachel, and then Laban is like, oh, yeah, we can't give away the younger daughter first, so here's Leah. But you can, don't worry. He's like, don't worry, you can still marry Rachel, just work for 7 more years. And that was kind of faith, right? Because of his faith in receiving Rachel's hand in marriage, he committed and worked for 14 years. That's so long. That's like most of us are between the ages of 18 and 23 or so. That's more than half of our lives, well over more than half. That's crazy. That's so long of hard work. But he had faith in receiving Rachel's hand in marriage. So let's look at another perspective of that we can relate to. Jacob was motivated, right? Motivated to marry Rachel. But motivation is just like this feeling. Like he was motivated, but he turned that motivation into commitment by working for 14 years. And that must have been difficult. Like after that first 7 years, he was like ready to celebrate. And then in the morning realizes that it's Leah, not Rachel. Maybe they looked similar. But then it's like 7 more years. 7 more years that he had to work. And that's crazy, you know? But that's faith. Faith we think of being just something that we have, like a light switch that turns on and off. It's like, oh, I believe in God, turn on the faith light switch. And then it's like, okay, I'm faithful. Go, Lord, I believe in everything, and now I can lead the nation of Israel from Pharaoh's land, right? No, Moses went through so much before that. So many faith bridges were built, right? He was in the desert alone for 40 years, and there were so many things that went along with that, a struggle for identity and everything. It was grown. That faith was grown just like anything else. Man, because faith takes muscle. Surprise. All right, so has anyone ever worked out? Speaking of muscle. Yeah, these guys, right? Working out is like your faith, right? So faith takes muscle, so we build muscle in the gym. And just like that, faith is a muscle, so we build it. So a couple years back, I was super into working out. I worked out in high school, but then whenever I got to college, I met a friend who was like ripped daddy 10,000. And the dude weighed like 5 pounds less than me, but he could bench like 400 pounds. No joke. He was like this tall and was so stacked. And so I worked out with him, and I discovered so much passion in it. It was so fun. Like I would do quiet times working out, basically. Just like blaring worship music in my ears. It was so much fun, right? Well, I worked out with a couple of guys. But this thing about working out, which some of you may have realized, is when you're first starting, you're like, hey, work out with me. Hey, work out with me. And people are like, yeah, I would, but I have to wash my beard and my stuff, and my shoes are squeaky. I can't work out. So and then about 2 months later, you've been consistently working out, and it starts to show, and then they flock to you. They're like, hey, can we work out with you? It's like, well, okay, but why didn't you just do it earlier, you know? This sort of happened a little bit, and I was trying to get people to work out with me, and it was just me and another dude. We worked out all the time. Not all the time, but 3 or 4 times a week at least. And I had another friend come up. He saw the results in both of us. He's like, hey, I want to work out with you. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's go work out right now. Yeah. And so we went to the gym, and it was arms, which, guys, know it's the best day, all right? All right? And so, yeah, it may not be. But anyway, so we go to the gym. It's arm day, and me and this other dude have literally been consistently working out for like a year. And so we're so used to it. Our body is so used to it. Our muscle endurance almost just thirsts to lift weights. And so we've got like 30-pound and 35-pound dumbbells, and we're just like, Yeah! So we're so pumped, right? Well, this other guy, he hasn't worked out for years. I mean, he's trying to go from 0 to 60 to 100, like, phew. And so he has like 15s, right? Because he can't do as much weight, as many reps. So he's 15-pound weights, and he's looking at us, and he's looking at the mirror, and he's looking around the room, and he's like, guys, I can't do this. This is crazy. And we're like, yeah. And he's like, guys, no, I don't have the muscles y'all have. I don't have the strength you have. I don't have that drive. I can't do it. While you guys work out over here, I'm just gonna go over in the back, and I'll just be on a treadmill, just running. And when y'all are done, you can get me before you leave. So he goes over to the treadmill. He also didn't have much experience running on a treadmill, and so he's going at like a nice, like slower jog, and he drops his phone. He bends down to pick it up, whoop, and he falls and flips and just gets floored, like shot back off the treadmill. And the gym was packed, y'all. Like, it was like one of those, like, it's like so packed that you think that like it must be January 3rd or something. Everyone made New Year's resolutions to work out. Like, it was that packed, right? And so he flips back, and he stands up. He picks up his stuff, his water, and his headphones, and his phone. He walks out of the gym, and he didn't go back for a really long time, like a couple years, right? But you know what I told him whenever? It's not anyone that you'll know. Anyway, so you know what I told him though? Whenever he looked me in the eyes and he's like, Ben, I can't do this. I was like, dude, you can do this. Do you think all these people came in here day one and they were just like throwing weights above their head, right? Do you think that each person came in here and was already at the finish line of like being big or, you know, whatever goals they had, being strong? No, of course not. We all started at day one. We all were in here consistently, day after day after day after day. We were motivated to work out, and then we committed to that motivation, and we came in here consistently. That's the reason that we have 30s, 35-pound weights, and you only have 15s. And sometimes day one can be the hardest, right? Does anyone know who Joe Frazier is? Nice. So Joe Frazier was this boxer in the 70s, and he was a champion, right? He was the first man to ever beat the undefeated Muhammad Ali, all right? So Muhammad Ali has just defeated the champion, George Foreman, I think, and he's now like the champion of the world, right? He's never been beaten, and Joe Frazier beats him. That's pretty crazy, right? Well, you've probably heard this quote from him. If we could go ahead and put that up. Champions aren't made in the ring, they're merely recognized there. When you cheat on in the early light of the morning will show, what you cheat on in the early light of the morning will show up in the ring under the bright lights. He's all about consistency. So, no one's born a champion, right? A champion is created through a commitment to work harder than anyone else. That's what he would say, you know. His championship wasn't born in this one split second when he threw that last punch, right? Like, yeah, that's how it looks. But that championship, that championness inside of him had been growing. He had been cultivating it. Early morning runs, early morning punching the punching bag, the speed bag, whatever boxers do. Consistency, until eventually he got the chance to show that champion that was inside of him, right? It was just discovered there. It was in him the whole time, and he had been working on it through consistency. And if we look in the Old Testament, we have a guy named Naaman. You guys may have heard of him. He was a leper, and it says in the Bible that his leprosy was so intense, so bad, that his skin was like snow. And I don't know if y'all know what leprosy is, but I always just imagine a dude who has skin like a zombie, more or less. And he goes, and Elijah tells him, go wash yourself in the Jordan River 7 times, and you'll be healed. And Naaman's like, all right, let's do this, or something. I don't know if he said anything. But he goes to the Jordan River, and it's like this dirty, nasty river. Like, why would you wash in it anyway? But he washes in it one time. He like, oh, Nothing happened. Second time, nothing. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. We wash it 6 times, nothing happens. There's no fruit to show of this labor whatsoever, right? But the 7th time, he washes, and he's healed. Boom. Because of his faith and the consistency, that commitment that he kept working, he kept washing himself. And the 7th time, he's healed, right? Or Joshua fit the battle of Jericho. You'll know that song? So Joshua fights the battle of Jericho. Jericho was an impenetrable fortress, kind of like a Pentagon or something. I feel like the Pentagon for some reason. When I think impenetrable fortress, I think of the Pentagon nowadays. But those walls were like 14 feet thick, excavations have shown us. They were like 12 or so feet tall, but then they had this extra part of the wall that was like 30 feet long that went in. So it was almost like this bubble, like this giant stone bubble. And that was impossible to get in. They didn't have tanks, cannons, explosives, right? And God gives them the crazy plans, like Joshua, for 7 days in a row, I want you to go out there in the morning. I want you to walk around it 7 times. The number 7 is so prevalent in the Bible. So the first day, they go and they walk around. Cool. Second day, they go and they walk around 7 times. They keep going. And whenever they're halfway through, it's not like they looked at the wall and they were like, nice, it's working. Look at the cracks. Like, ah. No, it was like, we look like idiots walking around this giant wall. And the people inside, like people lived in parts of the wall, and they could totally just look out and be like, what are those guys, like starting a track team, running around the wall? But on that 7th day, Joshua went out there with the priests. They walked around the wall 7 times. And literally on the 6th walk around, nothing had happened. But on the 7th walk, they blew their trumpets, and the wall came tumbling down. What? Like, that's crazy. God is so crazy. Like, that's an insane method of war, you know? But Joshua was committed. He was faithful. He had faith in the Lord enough to carry out those tasks that the Lord had told him to do. And, man, I always think, what if Joshua wouldn't have walked around at that 7th time? What if, like, his guys are kind of like, Joshua, this is stupid. We've been walking around this wall every day. It's kind of big. We're kind of tired. Nothing's happening. There's not a crack. They're just making fun of us, right? Well, what if on the 6th day, Joshua finally succumbed to that and is like, you guys are right. This is a crazy plan. Why did God tell us to do this? Let's find another way to get in, you know? I don't know what we're going to do, but this is dumb. Like, what if he would have just stopped? I'll tell you what would have happened. Jericho wouldn't have fallen, right? The promised land wouldn't have gone to God's people yet. Like, the entirety of history could have been changed by that one man's decision, right? That one leader's decision. And I think the same thing, like, what if you've been praying something every day for months, consistently praying it every day for months, and you're like, Lord, I want this to happen, you know? And then God is so ready to just make this plan go into motion, and he has this plan, it's like he's at a machine, he's just going to push the button, and finally things are going to move, right? Maybe there's something that was holding it back before, but like on the next day that you pray, that prayer is going to be answered, right? Well, what if you stopped one prayer short? That's crazy to me. Like, I never want to be just one prayer away from something, from someone's salvation, or from something, from some, divine appointment, from some amazing thing that is God-willed. I don't ever want to be one prayer short from being involved in that. Man, and so Joshua went on that 7th day. He walked around the wall. Big things happened, Faith is a muscle, and he was flexing it. Yeah. So we may feel motivated to build our faith, but how do we change that motivation into more than that, into a commitment? It's kind of a hard question, right? But I'm going to tell you a secret. You may even know this. You may have heard it before, but you didn't apply it, or maybe you did, and you're probably doing pretty successful if you did. But this is a secret of changing motivation, almost like potential energy changes into kinetic energy. This is the same thing, changing motivation to commitment. You know what it takes? Daily goals. These could be tiny, tiny daily goals. But it's something that you're consistent with and something that you stick to. And man, if you really do stick to daily goals, things that you planned out and you wrote down and then you did it, it will change everything about your life. it will change your spiritual life, and everything else will follow. So here are a few examples, sort of, to kick around, I guess. The first one is having a daily quiet time. We talked about this in the past 2 posts. And, man, it's so important and imperative to have quiet times in your life, wherever you're at. What does a quiet time look like? It looks like, it could just be sitting there, having some headphones in, or some speakers, and listening to a worship song, letting the words pour over you, or internalizing those words and singing them back to God, even in your mind, just being like, Lord, these are my words to you, or just listening to them and then talking to God about them afterwards. It could be 10 minutes, guys. But man, what a difference it will make if you schedule it in to your life. Because just like Mikey talked about in those sermons, is what we schedule into our lives is so important, right? And you can tell where treasure is by where your money goes and where your time goes. And if every week you're making your schedule and you're like, dude, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, an hour here, 45 minutes here, I'm going to spend this much time with God no matter what, that will change your life. And a more difficult goal past that is something else that I got from Mikey, funny enough, and it's doing something scary. Whoa, Ben, I'm not trying to be scared up here, right? Or down there, wherever y'all are at. But no, doing something scary that God asks you to do. Something scary is something that takes courage. And so what could that be? Does that mean that you're going to get in a tightly enclosed space filled with snakes and spiders balanced at the top of a giant pole over the wide ocean? No. No, it's not, not like something that is a terrible fear per se, but something that takes courage that God asks you to do. This could be, talking to that person that you see in class all the time that's kind of intimidating and being like, hey, do you know the gospel? Have you heard of this? It could be as simple as, approaching someone who's silently crying and saying, hey, God loves you so much. It could be going home and telling your atheist parents that you've decided to turn your life over to Christ and that you're going to live for the glory of God now. That could take courage. Or maybe to friends back home who have nothing to do with God, and every time you go home, they just want you to drink and party and do crazy things with them, and you could be like, guys, actually, I changed my life around. Like, those things take courage. So I always think back to this story of a time that I felt like God called me to do something, right? And so a couple years back, before I graduated, I lived in the dorms. I lived in the dorms my entire way through, basically, the whole time. And so there was this semester that so much was bearing on me with a fusion group and with a dorm, and the way it just seemed like the needle was sort of shifting, but not to God. You know what I mean? It seemed like it was shifting away. And I felt the Spirit. I felt like God was like, hey, pray for the hall, which is really easy, right? So you'd think, but he was like, go out there. I'm going to pray in tongues, pray in the Spirit before you go to bed every night. And I was like, sure. I was way less responsible then, and so I never wrote anything down. But for months, every single time that I laid down on my bed, I was going crazy with group projects, and sometimes I have to stay up till like 4 or 5 a.m. to do these big group projects. I was in like 6 at a time at one point. But I would lay down and be so tired. It'd be 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and the Spirit would be, hey, you didn't pray yet. You didn't go pray over the hall. I'd be like, all right, I'll get up, I'll put on my shoes, I'll put on my pants, whatever, put on something because it was probably cold outside, and then I'll go out and I'll do this thing that people think is so weird, right? And sometimes guys would see me, and I'd just be like walking like this or something, and it looks so weird, right? And I was a little scared to do it, but man, I've seen so much fruit in that. Since that happened, the hall coordinator even has become, is now a passionate Christian, right? The fusion group went from literally nothing and now it's booming. It's still booming. I'm not even there anymore, but like those prayers are still there. You know, our prayers go on forever, and that, you know, that's a story from my life, right? And Mikey says this thing that when he was younger, he was like, God, and it's not like this was a small decision, but he prayed the prayer of, God, you know, whatever you ask me to do, I'll do it as long as you're there with me. And man, I was just talking to him about it earlier, and he was like, that changed my life. Not only did that change Mikey's life, but it affects all of us. It changed all of our lives indirectly. That one decision for him to daily even do something that takes courage that God has asked him to do. And I forgot to tell you, there are really two main things that it takes to do that. And the first one, obviously, is that you have to be talking to God, right? And you have to be able to discern, you know, that the Lord is calling you to something, or is kind of yearning in some way for you to do this thing, right? And if you've never experienced that, or you don't know how to do that, talk to one of the leaders, one of the people with glow sticks, your mentor, your fusion leader, something like that. And you could totally, like, you'd be surprised. God's probably been speaking to you, and you haven't realized it. But the other thing that takes is, you know, truly visualizing God with you, and, you know, visualizing the Holy Spirit with you, because it is, and not thinking like, man, I'm gonna go talk to this really scary teacher and tell him that God loves him. It's all just me all alone. No, it's like it's you, and the Lord is right there beside you the entire way, every step, right? Every single step. So I saw this video the other day, and I instantly thought of, that's like our faith. You know, that's so much. It's got to be about Jesus. It just seems like it is. Just about building up our faith, right? Building up that muscle. And see what you think.
Rise and shine. 6 a.m. and your hand can't make it to the alarm clock before the voices in your head start telling you that it's too early, too dark, and too cold to get out of bed. Aching muscles lie still in rebellion, pretending not to hear your brain commanding them to move. A legion of voices are shouting their unanimous permission for you to hit the snooze button and go back to dreamland. But you didn't ask their opinion. The voice you've chosen to listen to is one of defiance. A voice that says there was a reason you set that alarm in the first place. So sit up, put your feet on the floor, and don't look back, because we've got work to do. Welcome to the grind. For what is each day but a series of conflicts between the right way and the easy way? 10,000 streams fan out like a river delta before you, each one promising the path of least resistance. Thing is, you're headed upstream. And when you make that choice, when you decide to turn your back on what's comfortable and safe and what some would call common sense, well, that's day one. From there, it only gets tougher. So just make sure this is something you want, because the easy way out will always be there, ready to wash you away. All you have to do is pick up your feet. But you aren't going to, are you? With each step comes the decision to take another. You're on your way now, but this is no time to dwell on how far you've come. You're in a fight against an opponent you can't see, but oh, you can feel him on your heels, can't you? Feel him breathing down your neck. You know what that is? That's you. Your fears, your doubts, and insecurities all lined up like a firing squad, ready to shoot you out of the sky. But don't lose heart. While they're not easily defeated, they are far from invincible. Remember, this is the grind, the battle royale between you and your mind, your body, and the devil on your shoulder who's telling you that this is just a game. This is just a waste of time. Your opponents are stronger than you. Drown out the voice of uncertainty with the sound of your own heartbeat. Burn away your self-doubt with a fire lit beneath you. Remember what we're fighting for, and never forget that momentum is a cruel mistress. She can turn on a dime with the smallest mistake. She is ever searching for the weak place in your armor, that one tiny thing you forgot to prepare for. So as long as the devil is hiding the details, the question remains, is that all you got? Are you sure? And when the answer is yes, when you've done all you can to prepare yourself for battle, then it's time to go forth and boldly face your enemy, the enemy within. Only now you must take that fight into the open, into hostile territory. You're a lion in a field of lions, all hunting the same elusive prey with a desperate starvation that says victory is the only thing that can keep you alive. So believe that voice that says you can run a little faster and you can throw a little harder, and that for you, the laws of physics are merely a suggestion. Luck is the last dying wish of those who want to believe that winning can happen by accident. Sweat, on the other hand, is for those who know it's a choice. So decide now, because destiny waits for no man. And when your time comes and 1,000 different voices are trying to tell you you're not ready for it, listen instead to that lone voice of dissent. The one that says you are ready, you are prepared. It's all up to you now.
Freaking Nike. Man, like that's so good. It motivates me so much. Every single, man, it says, what is life but a series of decisions? With each step, you're faced with the decision to take another step. I hope that motivates you so much. I hope it motivates you to be like, yeah, I'm going to make a commitment to the Lord. I'm going to put him in my schedule. I'm going to do this. And maybe it motivates you to get up here to this altar and to spend some time in prayer, spend some time in the presence of the Lord. But I challenge you, instead of ever coming up to this altar right now, to always go to the altar each morning in your own quiet time, right? I challenge you to do that. Go to the altar there. Still come to the altar here. Like, it's awesome. But I challenge you to go to the altar at home. Well, Ben, I have class at 9 a.m. I have to get up to 8 to get ready. Shut up. Get up at 7:30 then. Like, get up 30 minutes earlier and do this. It's so incredible just that we have the chance to do that. We have the opportunity to be in a relationship with the Lord God Almighty, maker of heavens and the earth. Hallowed be his name. That's incredible. Like, how incredible is that? And we're stuck like, oh, but I could get 30 minutes more of sleep. Dude, like, how incredible is it? We have to take that chance to be with God, to be in his presence, and to say, you know what, Lord, I know I have to get up early, but I'm going to spend an hour with you. I'm going to spend 30 minutes with you, because holy crap, that is the one thing that matters no matter what happens in your life. It's the one thing that'll always be there. It's the one thing that you can always take to the bank, that God's there and that you can hang out with him, that you can have that relationship with him, and that he loves you so much and he wants the best for you. And so many times, instead of us going to that love and going to be like, Lord, thank you so much, and instead of going to those open arms, we just shirk it off like it's just another thing. We just shirk it off like it's a responsibility or something, or like it's something that, like, we just take it for granted. And man, I pray for you guys that you don't take that for granted. And maybe you've already been doing this. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you really have already been scheduling it in, and it's been awesome. Well, you're not done, you know. Take another step. Take another step out in faith and be like, Lord, send me to do something scary every day. Build that faith bridge. Faith is something we build on, right? So build on that, build on that, build on that. Continue to build on it. Do something scary with the Lord every day, something that takes courage, because it will change your life. And just to be used by the Lord, it's probably the greatest thing we'll ever experience on earth. And we're so bent to earthly things. We're so bent to be like, when I get married, it's going to be so good. Or when I finally date someone, it's going to be so good. When I graduate from college, it'll be good. I'll get a good job. We're putting our hope in the wrong things, because you already have what you should be putting your hope in. You already have the best thing you could ever get in this world. And it's that relationship with God. He sent his son to die for us, his innocent son to die for us, so that we could be looked at as righteous by him. It's the greatest. That's the greatest love, and it's so incredible. Why? Like, I'm talking to myself too, because so many times I stay up late or something. I lock up the Wesley, and I just got to go to sleep. And sometimes I'll get up 20 minutes before going to work, you know? And I'm like, man, what opportunities am I ripping away from myself? So, you know, maybe one more thing actually is that putting myself back in your shoes, you know, taking a couple steps back. What was I like in Tupos? I was like, yes, I love this. Mikey would be motivating me to do something, right? And so for a time, I kind of had responsibility looming over me when I was younger, and I would make these lists in Tupos. I would feel this emotional high and this motivation. I'd be writing lists, or like in my phone writing notes. They'd be so long of the things I was going to do to get back on top of whatever, you know, maybe I was failing a class, or maybe, I wasn't having quiet times or something, and I'd make these lists of the things I needed to do to get back on top. Next day would roll around, and if I even looked at the list, if I even looked at it, I would be like, whoa, this is too long. I can't do this. And I would instantly just fall right back exactly where I was, right? And that's what I want you not to do. Just make a simple daily goal, something small that you can do, that you will do, and be consistent with it, and turn that motivation into commitment. Do a little bit more. Because so many times we're so motivated to do something, we're so motivated to come down to this altar, we pray, and then the next day, nothing. We just go right back to the mundane. We just go right back to going to class, going to lunch, going to class, going to the Wesley, going to sleep, doing homework, and we totally don't apply any of it. Well, right now, I challenge you, instead of coming down to this altar, I challenge you to go to the altar tomorrow morning on your own time, to get up 30 minutes earlier, 20 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, if it's that much of a sacrifice for you to sacrifice some sleep, to have a conversation with the creator of the heavens and the earth.